Hey, you remember what I said about the Basilisk Ultimate on my Death Adder Elite video? Well... How can I put this? I don't have infinite money and the mouse is still really expensive, but I really have to make a dedicated video about it because I think it is really good. And it better be for a mouse that costs almost 200 euros. But here's the deal. On the second half of 2019, Razer finally acknowledged that Logitech's complete dominance over the wireless gaming mouse scene needed some competition. So they launched first the Razer Viper Ultimate and a little later the Razer Basilisk Ultimate, both featuring Razer's latest tech on both sensor and buttons and a lot of other small things around the mouse. But the real kicker is, if you are looking for a wireless mouse in 2020, you're probably looking at the Viper and at the Basilisk, or maybe even the Logitech G Pro Wireless for its shape, or maybe even the lack of Razer Synapse. But the truth is, I spent about a month thinking about if I wanted the Razer Viper Ultimate or the Razer Basilisk Ultimate for my Christmas gift. That's key. The only reason I even thought about spending this much on a mouse, it's because it was sponsored, and from time to time you gotta treat yourself. Coming from the Death Adder Elite, I was a little skeptical about the weight. Every single gaming mouse company is pushing lighter and lighter weight mouse, and buying a mouse that is 105 grams in 2020 sounded like a big mistake. But maybe it's the weight distribution, or maybe it's the
Are you serious?
Maybe it's the weight distribution, or maybe it's just the smaller size on the mouse, but I could swear that it feels lighter than the Death Adder Elite. But let's start with all the positives about the mouse and leave every single con right at the end of the video, because most of them are nitpicks and small things to be improved, because I really feel this mouse is that good. Starting with the shape. To me, it is one of the most important characteristics on a mouse, and this shape does not disappoint. Coming from a Death Adder Elite, it is a smaller mouse, but comparing to that most mice are, it still manages to fill most of my palm, which is my preferred way of holding the mouse. And if you're familiar with the Logitech G502, well, the shape of this mouse, it's, let's say, heavily inspired on that. It's not the exact same, but it's really similar. The buttons are surprisingly clicky, and I really wasn't expecting much of an improvement when coming from Razer's previous mechanism, but they are clicky, they feel great, they feel quite uniform all around the mouse. The side buttons are in a good placement with a good size. I never really used the additional paddle on the front of the mouse. I see no use for it. The scroll wheel is great. You can adjust resistance. I just use it all the way down with 0 resistance for complete silence. But if you want to annoy every single person around you, you can put it very hard and loud, which some people might do. The left and right movement of the scroll wheel, it's really useful if you do any sort of video editing to scroll left and right on your timeline without having to click on the keyboard. You have to have Synapse installed and running to configure that mouse click to work like that, which in my opinion, it's really weird. It's just a mouse configuration. They could easily just save it to the onboard storage like the rest of the mouse binds. The wireless is incredible. It is reliable, consistent, and fast every single time. Long are the days of a wireless mouse being a downside. That argument is dead and buried. But with it being wireless, you have to consider the battery life. And honestly, it is a non-issue, I think. I've used the mouse for a full week with 50% brightness on the RGB and with it automatically suspending after not moving for 2 minutes, and I could easily do 7 days without a charge. If you want to use the RGB at 100%, which to me it's really bright and unnecessary, the battery life goes to about 3 to 4 days with normal use, which still is more than most wireless mouse with RGB. And with the included dock, you don't really feel like you have to charge the mouse. There's no plugging a cable needed. You just plop the mouse there when you finished using it, and it will always have a charge. Talking about the RGB, that is a very legitimate feature that improves the performance of every device that has it. In this mouse, it's pretty great. You have 2 zones on the side with 7 and 3 RGB LEDs inside, and you have on the scroll wheel and on the Razer logo. So in total, 14 zones of RGB, which is a lot. And if you're playing a game like Apex Legends, you have cool animations that really work great on this mouse. And I feel most of my teammates in game are looking at their mouse instead of the game. That's usually how bad my teammates are when I solo queue. The mouse coating on the outside looks slightly different than the Razer Death Adder Elite. Not by much, but a little bit. It's still not great. It still accumulates some fingerprints, but it is not very slippery, at least not in my hands. But if you tend to have very sweaty hands, maybe go for something that has a little bit of a harsher texture, like the Death Adder V2 or the Viper Ultimate. And last, but definitely not least, you have the reason this entire mouse feels so great, and that is Razer's Focus Plus sensor. Now, I've said in the past, optical sensors are quite comparable between all of them, but this one is one of the best ones if you want to go into the little tiny details. Probably one of its most impressive features is that it can track at up to 650 inches per second with an accuracy of 99.6%. That means that if you have a 10-meter mouse pad and you can move your mouse from one side of the table to the other in 1 second, it will track your movement with 99.6% accuracy. If that doesn't make you confident about how good this sensor is, I really don't know what will. But unfortunately, nothing is perfect, even though this mouse comes so close to being absolutely perfect. There are still some small improvements that I'd like to be made to the mouse. First, the mouse is really expensive. Most people, when they're looking for a replacement gaming mouse, they're not looking at the sub $200 or euro budget. They're looking at more like 50 to 70, 50 to 80 euros. I think the wireless segment of the gaming mouse market needs more competition so that the prices can come down and more people can adopt it. The place where my ring finger rests on the side of the mouse is very close to the right button on the mouse, so sometimes I almost pinch my finger when clicking on the right mouse button. It's a small and quite personal issue with my hand size. One other thing is the mouse tends to rattle a little bit if you're just holding it and moving it around. I'm not sure what makes this noise, maybe the buttons at the front or maybe the scroll wheel a little bit, but on the mouse pad it doesn't make that noise, so to me that's okay. There's a little bit of side movement on both mouse 1 and mouse 2, but I think that comes with the long pointy design. If the buttons were smaller, I don't think they would move. Even though I think the mouse is really fast for its weight, it could always be lighter. I think the mouse would feel great if you shaved off an extra 20 grams on it, maybe remove the paddle at the front of the mouse to make it lighter and all that modularity, maybe then it'll be lighter. I would even go as far as to say that the scroll wheel could only have 1 resistance if that will shave off 20 grams on the mouse, which probably will not, but you know, it's an idea. And finally, my last nitpick is sometimes when I'm playing Apex Legends and I want to mark something with the scroll wheel click, I tend to jump because I have it bound to bunny hop there. But with 0 resistance, it's quite hard to click and not scroll forwards or backwards. So maybe the scroll click could be a little softer and then it will be easier to click. But as you can see, my con list is quite small because I really like the mouse. It's the king of all mice, and in my opinion, if you have the budget for it, I think it's really worth it. Even if most people don't consider it an FPS mouse, I think to bridge the gap between a productivity / gaming mouse, it strikes a point right in the middle, and I think that's a great category to be. So that's my opinion on the Basilisk Ultimate. If you enjoyed this video, maybe check some of my other ones down there. I did a Razer Death Adder Elite in 2020 video last time around that turned out pretty good, or maybe some phone reviews or gadget reviews in general. That's pretty much what I have to offer. It's my face and technology. So yeah, if you want, stick around, click subscribe, and yeah, bye!